Hi guys, nice to see you again at our YouTube channel. My name is Vasily Gamov, and today we are going to talk about a new subject, a new topic about Euro 2024. We already discussed a lot on our channel about this championship. So this time we decided to dive deep into African market and to discuss technological innovations, future of the gaming market there in Africa, and how to use all the potential of this continent while the main championships like Euro 2024. We have Gali on air. Gali, could you introduce yourself?
Sure, Vasily. Thank you so much first for having me. I'm Gali Hartuv. I'm the CEO of WarriorLab. We're a global management consultancy focused in iGaming, social gaming, and sweepstakes. I've been in the industry now around 13 years, consulting for three of those. I'm based in South Africa. The African continent is obviously very close to home. Massive football fan, so very excited for the Euros and very excited to discuss it today.
Nice to see you again here, and it's a pleasure always to talk to you. So, the first point we would like to discuss, I think we should make a little intro into this African market. First, what we should mention that it's quite big, it's quite potential. Due to last researches, it's about 5 million users with internet with betting activities on this continent all across the continent. About 43% is internet coverage. It was in 20s, so I think nowadays it's even more. And if we talk about money volume, because we all love to talk about money here, for example, just to illustrate, for a Kenyan or Nigerian market is about $2 or $3 billion per market in part of iGaming. So it's huge, I would say. Gali, what is your idea about African landscape as you're from South Africa, from Cape Town? Most probably you know better than me what is going on there. Could you share some insights and trends about it?
I think the African market is an incredible market to be in. It's still emerging in many regards. It's growing year on year, and it has seen and experienced significant growth in recent years, driven by a combination of a young and tech savvy population, uh, an increase in internet penetration, as well as the widespread use of mobile phones. Africa is a mobile first market. um, Mobile phones, I would say, have revolutionized the way that betting in Africa has become popularized. Many Africans have access to betting platforms through their smartphones. Um, we have seen areas like SMS betting becoming popular. Uh, Mobile as a platform in itself is just convenient and accessible. The youth component in Africa as well, it's a huge area, a large portion of the African population. I think something like 70% of Africa is under the age of 30. So demographic wise, it's a long term, I would say, market. I believe Africa will be as big, if not bigger, than LATAM, especially in the years to come. Um, Football is in the DNA of Africa. We're football crazy as well. Um, be it English Premier League, Champions League, AFCON, Euros. There's a lot in Africa here. Um, and as far as the continent itself, we're seeing growth across the board. We're seeing maturity in the market through regulation and structure. And we're seeing how Africa is now being taken seriously with certain countries competing at an international scale. The volumes that are coming out of Africa are admirable. And I think now we've gained the attention of the international market. We're seeing a lot more investment and a lot more international brands trying to get into the African market. There have been areas, Kenya, Nigeria, South Africa, for example, hugely popular geos within the African market. So I think as far as Africa goes, it's an amazing territory to be in. Um, it's not to say it doesn't have challenges as well, though, and I think it's important to highlight that Africa does have a lot of challenges. It's not, as I said, not as mature as what you would find in, say, like UK or other European markets. So regulatory uncertainty is a factor. Um, there's still some uncertainty and inconsistency across different countries, where some regions have well-defined regulations, while others have vague or non-existent laws, which does create challenges for operators looking to enter these markets. Problem gambling is another area in Africa that we shouldn't ignore. As betting activity has increased, and I'm sure this is something we can discuss in a bit, but as betting activity has increased, it's led to some concerns around gambling and addiction, and it's highlighted the need for responsible gambling measures and support systems to address these issues. Payment systems in Africa, while mobile money services are obviously widespread, the integration of reliable and efficient payment systems still remains a challenge in certain markets. And I would say infrastructure is another limitation that you'll find in some regions. So limited internet connectivity or inadequate technological infrastructure, which can hinder the full potential of online operator growth. So, I mean, those are just some of the points off the top of my head regarding Africa. But overall, I would say it's an incredible market.
Wow, a really short intro about the African market with the best and most important information about it. From my side, I would like to add that yes, all Gali speaking about is true. I recently been to Cape Town, had the pleasure to meet Gali in person. There was a huge conference. I see major brands entering the market. They are in Africa, but still there is plenty of space for operators, for affiliates, for regulations, for talks about responsible gaming, for charity, and so on. So it's new one. You should enter it, and in part of regulations, in part of markets. Uh, if we would like to make bets, I will bet on Kenya, Nigeria, and South Africa markets, as I see the greatest potential in them. So if you work with these markets or thinking about it, just dive deep into. So this was the intro, and let's go further with our more specific content. I would say let's talk about opportunities and challenges in Africa. We already mentioned some of them, but I would like to talk especially about betting. Yeah, because it's Euro, it's championships, everybody excited about it. So, what opportunities in part of Euro 2024 do you see on the African continent in general, and maybe in some particular countries?
So going back then to live betting and streaming, with Africa and the development and infrastructure, we have reached the point where internet speeds are now capable to facilitate, in most markets, better mobile networks that allow for live betting and streaming services. So in Africa, not everyone has the luxury of having sports broadcasted to TVs in their homes. And this has made streaming an incredibly popular and, I'd say, desirable unique selling point for operators. And in this case, what you'll find, for example, um, Nigeria has become very popular with this, with several platforms offering live streaming of football matches, which obviously is a great attraction mechanic to acquire more users. Then in that and one that stands out there, I would say, is Bet9, which offer live betting and streaming, and it's mobile friendly as an interface. So when we're looking into opportunities for Africa, specifically around Euro 2024, I would say live streaming is a massive opportunity. In addition to that, there's an increased user engagement that we see throughout Africa across every major tournament that takes place. And football is definitely not an exception to this constant reoccurring pattern. Euro 2024 in Africa attracts millions of football fans. Africa as a continent is something like 1.3 billion people. There was a report done by Geopol not too long ago that said that 70% of African football fans engage in sports betting during major tournaments. That enthusiasm, in my opinion, translates into increased betting activity, because fans are looking to engage more deeply with the tournament. It then opens up more opportunity for promotional campaigns where betting companies can launch targeted promotional campaigns such as, bonuses, free bets, sign up offers, um, as well as Euro specific offers to attract more users and new users. Using Kenya as an example, what we saw in the 2018 World Cup is that betting activity in Kenya surged by 30%. So there definitely is a correlation between elevated betting activity and opportunity, especially around these major tournaments. If we look more on the acquisition side, we're looking at wider reach. Major tournaments like Euro 2024 generally have enough of a pool to attract casual fans that may not regularly engage in sports betting, which I see as an opportunity for betting operators to convert casual fans into regular customers. So I will use Nigeria as one of the countries you mentioned. The estimation is something like 60 million people participate in active sports betting within Nigeria, which is an insane, volume. It's just shy of the population of South Africa. And in that case, again, acquisition has a huge opportunity here to attract those casual fans. Beyond that, on a technological side and a technological innovation side, live betting is where it's at. Mobile integration is a non-negotiable, but then you have to consider the localization strategy as well. And the opportunity here is in localizing a product or localizing an offering with customized content that is tailored for local preferences. So that is potentially commentary in local languages, or having a user experience or an engagement strategy that leverages influencers and personalities within the region that are recognizable to upsell the tournament and the operator. And then beyond that, I would say the payment solutions, there are more opportunities here as well. And what we always find is the ROI on these tournaments is justification to look at expanding on a tech stack or a payment stack to expand your options for a region, knowing that you're going to see an elevated return. It can offset the cost of optimizing and expanding product. And so the opportunity there is, if you've been looking for a reason to expand on product, now's the opportunity, because the ROI potential is already there. So that's my answer in terms of opportunity now with Euros in Africa.
You came really well prepared, I would say, like a warrior from the WarriorLab, exactly. So
Yeah,
nice, nice having you today. And these recommendations really crucial. I'm totally agree with all of them. Even though I will go further, when you talk about Kenya, you mentioned like 70 something percent of mobile use. I can share that it's even higher. I would say up to 90% of users in Africa bets, up to our experience, bets on mobile devices. That means it's crucial. It's not like mobile first. I would say it's only mobile, because this 10%, it's like a really small part of it.
yeah,
And keep in mind, if you're an affiliate, if you're an operator, if you're not working with Africa yet, you're gonna join it. Keep in mind the population, the size of their salaries, and so on. Don't expect like big average prices, average checks per user, as for example in Scandinavian countries or in the US. But still, that doesn't mean there are no like high rollers or people into betting. I see people playing with iPhones last models. I see people betting with huge amount of money. So that's fine. Don't expect that Africa like with low budgets only. No, it's not. So, and if we go into more markets, into more countries, uh, for sure there are brands. They, as you told, they work not only in acquisition about online, but also about offline. And many people in Africa goes to bars, to some open air cinemas or something like that. They watch football matches. They participate in it really hard. And what we discussed with you before this podcast, that it's also important to understand, because Africa, it's not like um, the only continent with one rule for each country. It varies from country to country, in part of country, in part of culture, I mean, in part of language, in part of favorite footballists, about favorite national teams who they support. So make a research. For example, in French speaking countries, that's be weird to promote that England will win France or something, I would say, stuff like that. Yeah, and the same about English speaking countries. Also, there is Italian, Portuguese, German speaking countries in Africa, not only local languages. Keep it in mind. Google, do your homework before launching campaigns. That is very important. That will increase your ROI there.
I would add to
Uh,
that, Vasily, as well, that don't just expect Africa to accept you as a new operator unless you have some kind of local tie. If you've never been to
mhm.
Africa and you've never visited the region, or you don't have personnel and experts on the ground, there is no way that you're going to, I would say, outpace, outmaneuver, or outperform your local competitors. You need to have a finger on the pulse. You need to understand who your demographics are. And data only tells you so much. The data is not going to tell you the localized elements. It's not going to tell you how to manage such people. And I think you hit the nail on the head that Africa is not, it's not a region that has no high rollers. I work on VIP programs throughout Africa, all the time. WarriorLab being a VIP expert in and a big focus on what we consult on, we have seen certain high rollers in certain regions, I would say, outspend European VIPs. There is a lot of money in Africa. And if you get the trust of your players and people buy into what you're selling, the reality is that VIP in Africa is very much an existing concept. And we've seen it with VIP programs throughout Africa that have massive, massive amounts of spend month over month. Um, Africa is viable as a VIP market. It's not just small micro betting. There's some big fish out there.
Exactly, totally agree. The first part of your recommendation about local managers, it's really crucial. It's very important to work with local managers, to support local community, to understand their needs, to understand their desires, and be into it. For sure, it's difficult if you are not on the earth, if you are not involved in the culture and the community. So it's really good advice to have someone on earth helping you with all the processes. In part of VIPs, totally agree, there are different segments of players in Africa, and there is still big potential and part of money, as we discussed. Prediction, it will grow in Kenya, in Nigeria separately, up to $3 billion market. So it's really big. It's really big, and I'm sure that's not made only of $1 deposits or something. Yeah. So
100%.
yeah. Okay. Nice. We had to talk about challenges, opportunities. We already mentioned something about culture and connections on Earth with um, local managers, local governments, local regulators, and so on. So it's a good point to switch into regulations, into the landscape of regulations of iGaming in Africa. As I already mentioned, for me, I see the biggest progress with it in Kenya, Nigeria, and South Africa. Other countries looks like on the way. In some countries, there is no regulation yet. What is your idea about it? Do you see any other leaders? And what is like the current situation up to expertise?
So when we're looking at the challenges, and I would even go as far as saying the potential risks, um, what you'll find in Africa, people see Africa as just one giant region, and it's not. You need to look at Africa from a country perspective. It's the same how, you can't go, oh, LATAM. We're in LATAM. You're not going to treat, say Chile the same way as you would Brazil. So Africa is no different. I mean, the continent leaders are South Africa, Nigeria, and Kenya, without a doubt. South Africa, I would say, is the most mature market in terms of regulation and structure. We still have a very long way to go, and even now, I mean, we've just gone through our national election, and one of the policies that has been tabled is a reform to online gambling and the online gambling bill. Um, we're going through a political change in the country, and that impacts policy. So regulation uncertainty is definitely a challenge. Um, you've seen this in other African countries as well, like Uganda. And then you have more developing countries that are making concerted efforts to bring themselves up to modern standards. And I was very fortunate to have a representative from the Botswana Gambling Board recently on a panel of mine at Next in Malta. And we were talking about their efforts to implement and roll out new regulation and the initiatives that gambling boards are putting into place to support operators and how that symbiotic relationship is shaping out to be. But there are still compliance issues that we're seeing in terms of the regulatory, I'd say, landscape. Um, I remember back, I think it was in 2021, we saw the Kenyan regulation fine several operators for non-compliance, and I think the fines amounted to over $2 million in penalties, which proportionately to Africa, that's a significant fine. It's not often that you see major fines dished out in Africa. It's not to say they don't happen, they certainly do. But Kenya made a point that regulation needs to be respected. So when we're looking at the regulatory challenges, I think the inconsistent regulations across regions is one factor. Compliance and operator adherence to regulation is another. So we need to respect the regulation, we need to be compliant, and we need to make an effort to improve the markets that we're operating in. I think in addition to that, Africa, which is a very young demographic, problem gambling is definitely on the rise. I read a statistic while looking into the Euros and some of the data before this podcast, where the National Center for Problem Gambling in South Africa found that 17% of regular gamblers were at risk of addiction. So I would say the opportunity to such a challenge there is awareness. Um, we need to raise awareness and have awareness campaigns and support systems to educate the user about responsible betting practices and how to overcome challenges like addiction. We're an impressionable market, but at the same time, we're a superstitious market. So we're not going to just trust and give our money to any random operator that decides to enter the market, especially if it's a foreign operator that we don't know. Um, so we need to, again, going back to the localized element and going back into how this ties in with regulation, we need to understand our market. We need to understand the people, and we need to understand the compliance areas to win over trust. If we're going to operate in, I would say, a gray or black market, I would say, approach where we disregard in part responsible gambling or regulation, we will not win over the local player base. So we need to approach it with sensitivity. We need to be conscious of our expectation as an operator, and then we can start to really put effort into retention and growth of local brands, local operations.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's crucial to communicate with regulators. It's crucial to support the community, to make trust with the audience, to take care about the audience. It's not only the mm, like bank or money place. It's always about people, their lives, their emotions. So for sure, you should take care. And I know that it's not so easy, like every time with African market, with all of the countries to get regulations, to get in touch with licenses, to do it in legal way. I've heard a lot of stories about it. I know why. It's somehow connected to the culture. It's somehow connected that the market, I would say, is still young in Africa, in part of iGaming. So, but that is not the reason to act in some wrong way. That is the reason to find right guy to help you to go into market, like Gali, for example, with his agency. I'm sure you will take care of such requests if there will be some after this video. But yeah, it's crucial to work in a good way because we see great potential here, and it's on us to take care of this market. So next, talking about responsible gambling in Africa, in initiatives, what we can do with it at this stage. For sure, we can do some charity activities. For sure, we can talk to users, explain them how to play responsibly. For sure, we can prevent users from further activity if we see that he's some kind of addicted to it. I know such technologies already on the market. What else can we do? Have you seen any good ideas, new ideas on African market in part of that?
I've seen in Africa quite a lot of community outreach. It's a big focus area where operators obviously try to cement their position by creating these initiatives to support the community. Building soccer fields and supplying kits or sponsoring local clubs. But there are also other areas where I've seen betting operators go out and build houses and go out and raise funds and soup kitchens and things like that. And in those different circumstances where it's not about the gambling, it's about the community aspect, we can leverage those initiatives to raise awareness as well. The key markets that we've spoken about, Kenya, Nigeria, South Africa, with their regulatory authorities, we can collaborate. It doesn't only have to be the regulators responsible for X and the operators responsible for Y. Why can't it be a situation of operator and regulator come together to produce something bigger? And I think we don't see this enough. It's not to say it's not happening. There's obviously a connection between regulatory body and operator, but now try and create it almost like a triangle of regulator, operator, community. And I believe in that sense, if we can collaborate more on a community upliftment as the objective, I believe we'll be able to educate people better on how to play more responsibly. I think the outcome of that initiative would be a longer, I would say, account lifespan where retention becomes less of a concern and more sustainable rather than going through this process of churning out players every couple of weeks or months because we burn them out. When you look at what the regulators are doing in these key markets, there's always an elevated overview or overview on operators. I'll take Kenya for example. Their betting control and licensing board, the BCLB, that oversee their industry, they always look at issuing additional guidelines to ensure that operators are adhering to fair practices, where regulations become stricter to prevent excessive promotions that could lead to problem gambling. Nigeria's National Lottery and Regulatory Commission, they've got various state level bodies that regulate betting in the country, but they usually enforce and enhance monitoring during major tournaments to ensure compliance with the regulations, where operators then are required to implement different initiatives like strict anti-fraud measures, as well as responsible gambling protocols. And again, even in South Africa, close to home for me, the National Gambling Board, as well as our provincial gambling boards, so every province in South Africa has its own provincial gambling board, during events like the Euro, our oversight intensifies. We try and heighten our focus on preventing illegal gambling activity in the country. And we also ensure then that licensed operators are promoting responsible gambling wherever they possibly can or wherever required. We even see in more developing countries like Uganda, for example, where their gambling board increases it's more temporary measures to manage increased betting activity, which also includes public awareness campaigns on responsible gambling. So even though they're not the most developed country, their initiatives are about public awareness. And you see the same in Uganda. Uganda have special guidelines that are issued to manage spikes in betting activity, which focuses on consumer protection and preventing underage gambling, which is also a concern in Africa, given how young our average demographic is. So there are initiatives that we're seeing in other countries. Not every country adopts the same approach, but the initiatives are there. As operators, we need to know what those initiatives are and how we can contribute to them so that we can support them and in turn support the regulator who is going to hopefully support us long term.
Yes, exactly. These communications between operators and regulators should be tight. They are always should be in touch and help each other, because that's how we develop the industry. And when we talk about Africa, I think that's enough about responsible gambling and regulations. That's one of the interest parts for me, but I guess not for the audience. Maybe it may sound a little bit boring, but still, it's very important, and you should invest your time in it every time. Next, when we go about Africa, when we talk about that this market is young, that means some issues, I would say, not only about regulations, about building up the community and so on. There are different other fields where we can improve something. Let's talk about data privacy, about cybersecurity, because when you enter the market, you should do it in a proper way with proper technologies and so on. And I believe, unfortunately, not everybody acts like that. I guess maybe I'm wrong. Let me know if I. We talk about cybersecurity. What challenges in betting market in this field in Africa?
So I don't think you're wrong that it's definitely a concerning topic. Um, I will tie my first point into compliance again. Different African countries have different and varied legislation around data protection laws. And it's important to understand them. And I'll use South Africa as a perfect example. In South Africa, kind of like GDPR, we have what's called POPIA, which is the Protection of Personal Information Act. And this is a robust protocol around data protection for regulation, as well as a comprehensive framework around how personal information can be utilized. So it's important to first familiarize yourself with existing legislation around how to utilize data. Then I would look into technological infrastructure. So if we have the infrastructure, especially considering, like you said, 90% of Africa is mobile, given the high reliance on mobile devices for betting, we need to ensure then that we have security for mobile applications, as well as transactional security. So mobile platforms, for example, are particularly susceptible to malware and security threats. So I would say again, their user awareness is important. They may not be aware of the best practices for data security, which makes our players more vulnerable to scams or attacks. So education and awareness is incredibly important. I read an insane statistic the other day around deep fake technology and how deep fake fraud in South Africa since 2023 has spiked 1,500%. And that is a crazy statistic. I think in Nigeria it was also over 1,000%. We're talking in less than a year, or just over a year, that deep fake and the utilization of AI to commit fraud is spiking at a rapid rate across Africa. So, with that said, I think how to combat these sort of data threats would be end-to-end encryption, trying to find a way to protect data from being intercepted during transmission. I think security storage from the operator side is a massive focus area, to ensure that no data can be accessed without proper authorization. Other areas that you see in many other industries, like banking, for example, is two-factor authentication, which we could consider, or even biometric verification. These are obviously very sophisticated technologies when it comes to data protection, and not many operators are going as far as trying to protect data the way banks would, but it is considerations. And then, of course, just having clear and transparent data privacy policies to help users understand how their data is collected, used, and protected, I think is the responsibility of the operator to be clear and transparent in what they're doing with users' data, because that will allow the player to at least understand to what degree they are sharing data and what happens afterwards. And I would say that would be a good point for me to actually wrap up this point. We spoke about POPIA and legislation in terms of data protection laws already, so I'm not going to go back to that. So yeah, I just think from an operator side, have clear and transparent data privacy policies and help your players to understand how you're collecting data, how you're using their data, and how their data is protected.
Yes, really good point. But probably in part of this two-step verification or long KYC form in the beginning when you just enter the betting or casino operator product. Um, we should mention also the marketing side about it. Yeah, because then if we add more fields in the registration form, if we do it more complicated, it will like decrease our conversion rates
Yeah.
in the beginning of the funnel. So probably there should be a balance between marketing side and legal side and responsible gaming side, because if you do it more complicated, probably there will be no interest for some brands to work on the market. Doesn't mean that brands like bad brands. No, they are not. But there should be a balance. Maybe it's gonna be on some of the next steps, while playing activities, while betting activities. Like, oh, please add this information about you, add this information about you, and so on. What do you think about it? Or is it? Do you consider it's crucial to collect all the data in the beginning of the funnel and decrease the conversion rate, or there is still place for some balanced solutions, I would
There's
say?
definitely place for balance. I mean, I've seen operators in Africa that do go upfront and request everything. Um, is it necessarily the wrong approach? No. It depends on the region again and what your obligation as an operator is. But there are other operators out there. Take two-factor authentication. That if you're going to withdraw money or you want to deposit money, they may ask for a code or send codes to a mobile phone to add that layer of security. There are certain operators out there that will not pay you a withdrawal unless they have full KYC. So, and that KYC may not have been requested upon registration, and may only be requested upon withdrawal. Um, there are different ways to go about this, and different operators function and operate in a different way. The marketing component, you're 100% right. If you overwhelm new registrations as the first experience, and you demand as a compulsory measure all information, assuming the legislation and regulatory requirement doesn't require everything from the beginning, you may want to revisit your strategy in asking for the mandatory requirements and then tapering in the user journey for the additional requirements. You can even leverage those requirements with incentive to show the player that it's not a tedious task or a chore to have to submit additional information and documents, and you can make it part of your user journey that adds a layer of encouragement. So if you're trying to verify an account, you could potentially offer some kind of incentive. If you're trying to expedite withdrawals and speed up withdrawals, you can leverage the fact that having this KYC information is the key to have expedited withdrawals and to avoid delays in future. There are so many different measures that you can take to market these requirements and important requirements and utilize it to better the player experience. It all comes down to how you communicate it and how you facilitate the KYC checks, the authentication checks, the data checks as part of the user journey. There are incredible companies out there that make this a seamless exercise. We work with numerous companies in our consultancy in order to facilitate for our operator clients the player journey to be as painless as possible. I went through a registration process as part of a product demo the other day for KYC in order to make a deposit, and the process from start to finish was 3 minutes. Through my mobile phone, took a picture of the front of my ID card, back of the ID card. I did a liveness check through the camera of my phone while making the purchase, which is what triggered this process. And in 3 minutes, I was verified and the deposit was into my account. The
Nice.
technology exists. You just need to know where to look and who to speak to.
Exactly, that's a good point. And if we talk about some points, some fields which are requested by the regulator to be on your form, for sure you should add it. There is no doubt in it. For all the other information which is collected for the two-step authentication to protect your data and so on, you can collect it on further steps. That's 100% true. That's what we do, for example, with our product. We motivate user to share the data, so we provide bonuses, we take care of him, set up authorization, and so on. So that's a good point, really. And I think all the operators who act in other ways should implement it, because it's really crucial to have this one. With Gali's help or without, you should do it. Okay, let's go further. Before talking about future trends and predictions about African markets, let's try to summarize the previous part. We've been talking much about Africa in particular for a while, not mentioning Euro 2024, but you should understand that before launching Euro campaigns, you should understand the market, what is going on there, and implement this knowledge into your marketing strategies. So, summing up the previous experience, I would like to mention just in a fast way some marketing channels that all of you can use in Africa. For me, for sure, it's SEO. For sure, it's PPC campaigns and social media marketing campaigns. Still, if it's a region with a license, if the brand have a license, you can launch licensed campaigns on Facebook, on Google, and so on. So there is no need to act some black hat or gray hat activities. You can do it in legal way. It's very smooth and easy. About approaches, already we mentioned some activities in part of sport national teams, football national teams. Already we mentioned some activities in part of football players which are famous in this particular country. What else can we mention, Gali? Are there any other strategies like Wheel of Fortune or special bonuses for Euro? What is your recommendation here?
So, just to add one more element of marketing in Africa is physical marketing, billboards, and people on the ground. So, Africa has a massive agent network, very similar to what you would find in countries like Brazil or India. The agent network is a massive marketing channel that you should try and tap into as well to get the word out there into the communities and off digital platforms to spread word of mouth, because everyone knows the power of word of mouth. And because Africa relies heavily on trust, these agent networks generally are very reputable, and they do bring a lot of volume. As far as marketing options outside of just the platforms, it's important to try and create marketing campaigns that are not just copy paste of your competitor. When it comes to the strategies of marketing, especially during Euro 2024 or any other major tournament, people are overwhelmed by data. People are overwhelmed by the amount of marketing that they get. So, like what we do in VIP, there needs to be a value add to the type of marketing material that's going out there. It can't just be deposit today and get a bonus. They get that even if Euro wasn't there. Try and tie in to data, leverage data. The data component is absolutely crucial when it comes to targeted marketing or even segment marketing. So when you're looking at Euro or any other big event, Champions League, AFCON, um, you need to look down into the demographics of who you're targeting. If you're going to message everyone, you're just going to spam people. You're going to get unsubscribed. Your email sender score is going to drop. You could land up in spam. Like, the last thing you want during a big event is that Google blocks your email domain because you've been abusing your marketing channels. So you need to be selective. SMS is a channel in Africa that is still very, very much utilized because of the mobile dependency throughout the continent. So you can complement email campaigns with SMS. You can actually heighten SMS campaigning. So you need to drill down into the data to segment your target audiences, and then you should be selective in what you're going to be advertising and how you're going to be advertising it. There are other technological deployments that have come out in Africa, such as data free, for example, that have allowed for players to play without internet. So even in the most remote locations, bringing in even temporarily such technologies will allow you to market to an audience even if they don't have data, even if they don't have an internet connection. So these are other considerations to improve your marketing reach, as well as conversion efforts, as well as success rates.
Yeah, that's a very interesting technology about reaching audience without the internet. That's really cool. If you have any questions, dear viewers, about this technology, type your comments down below the video. Gali will join it and answer and provide you with some insights about it. So, summing up this marketing part, I would say it's also crucial to take care about the African market, to spread your marketing activities not only in part of which football team or player or slot machine, if it's somehow connected to football or soccer, to use. It's also important to spread your activities. For example, if you have a marketing tournament for your affiliates, for your players across the world, include Africa in it. So, I mean, try to bring something special which never been used before, and you will be like leader of this thing. Also, you should take care about players, and they are not interested only in winning free bets. Free bet is a good idea for sure. Always you like to place a bet on free, but so it's a big show for everybody. So invest big in emotions. Think about people what they want and take care. Don't launch like usual promotions which you have every Wednesday, I would say, or other day of the week. Be special. That is the point. So, to sum up the podcast, we're going to talk about future trends in African market in part of Euro and championships like that for sure. But also, I would like to mention, as we have you on air, mention African trends in general. So, what is your prediction? What is your forecast about African market and betting events for the nearest 5 years? I would say.
I think without a doubt, market penetration is going to increase significantly in the next 5 years. I would like to think we'll have more international investment into Africa, with international companies seeing it as a viable territory. This will obviously lead to regional expansion as well. And with regional expansion, I think we're going to see regulatory framework start to become more mature, which will also attract international companies to enter into Africa. I think my prediction is that AI and machine learning is going to become more present in the African market, not just for personalizing user experience, but for odds and having more of a dynamic betting platform. But I think one of the biggest utilizations in AI and machine learning that we'll see in Africa is the detection of fraud. I think this will be a massive tool that we will leverage throughout Africa to enhance not just user engagement, but security. I'm a big believer in blockchain technology, and I see this as an opportunity for Africa to also take more of an open approach to cryptocurrencies for betting. Some platforms have already got cryptocurrency integrated, but I see cryptocurrency as a big part, and I'll elaborate on that if you want to know. Um, but then beyond that, I would say esports and virtual sports is going to be a big focus in Africa. Esports, definitely, with its popularity raising globally, Africa has seen an increase in esports betting. And I believe that with the younger demographic, it's going to offer a diverse betting opportunity for those that get esports right. I believe virtual sports as well, and we saw it during the pandemic as well. But even now, virtual sports has become really popular. Computer simulated events, um, and I think that would be another opportunity there. And then to tie to one of the points that you mentioned previously, I want to highlight as a prediction. I think social betting is going to be a big focal point in Africa. So community features where users can share their bets or follow other bettors and participate in like community discussion. I see this as something that could become more popular. The trend basically would leverage social aspects and sport and enhance the user engagement and that community engagement, something that we've seen in sweepstakes and social casinos that have this community engagement and community factor. And then further in social betting, I would even go as far as saying betting pools, and betting pools where users can collectively place bets. I think this could be a possibility to emerge as a new trend where we offer a more interactive, community orientated experience where we can pool bet. Um, I think that would be my overall prediction on where Africa and where the future of Africa would be within the next 5 years.
Totally agree with every word. Almost have nothing to add, but still have something. Uh, am I right that you didn't mention Crash Games in your speech? Yeah, and
Yes.
Crash Games is another point which is huge. It's not about betting still. It's not about the subject of this podcast, but still, Crash Games is really popular there in Africa, in many
Yes.
countries. So if you go there with the product, check it out. Probably you need to have it. And what
I would
else?
take the word probably out. You need to have crash games in Africa. It is it's
Exactly.
almost a non-negotiable. At a lot of the African operators that we work with, crash games with almost every one of them is a top three, if not or top five, if not top three game on every operator.
That's it. Football and crash games, that's a mix of your success in Africa, I would say, at this moment. Let's see what's gonna be next. And if we talk about social gambling, sharing your results and so on, also a crucial point because it's combined with influencer marketing, which is also a stunning subject nowadays. So when you combine these social features with influencers, it's awesome. It's gonna bring you results also. So invest your time at least in researchers at this field. So, okay, generally speaking, to summarize the whole podcast, I would say Africa gonna be one of the biggest market in 5 or 10 years. It's already on the way. Internet spreading, mobile phones spreading, regulations appeared. Everybody involved in it, and luckily, I see that it's not only about local operators in Africa and local communities, but international companies also would like to enter the market. And I'm glad that many of them take care of what they do. They do responsible gambling activities. They communicate with regulators. They take care about the community. And that's crucial to make a trust between different cultures, different markets, and different people. So I think we should stop here. Probably we talk a lot. Oh, one more thing I would like to clarify. We've been talking about championship football, upcoming football championship, but also one day it's gonna be like the end in the middle of July. What's gonna be next? For sure, other football or soccer, or whatever you call it, activities. But what other sports are popular in Africa? Where people bet? Do you have any insights here?
So, well, to wrap up football, you can't ignore AFCON, the African Cup of Nations. Um, we'll see the starting up of Champions League and Premier La Liga, which is also very popular in Africa. But moving away from soccer, football, I think boxing and UFC is going to be a big area. It's already popular in many areas in Africa. Dedicated fan bases. And then tennis, I would say, is a big focal point. We've got Grand Slam tennis tournaments, Wimbledon, French Open, Australian Open, US Open. So I think tennis would be a big focal point. We have cricket now with the T20 World Cup ongoing. So I think there would be a big focus. Obviously, in South Africa, anything to do with rugby, you have to factor in. Um, and I think it again will come down to what does your local market tell you? Use your data, dive into historic betting, look into the industry trends, look into the localized trends. What is being promoted outside of betting? What are your local pubs promoting to attract people there? Jump on board the other industries that are attracting players through sport and see how you can leverage their marketing efforts to support your marketing efforts. Um, but I would say, in terms of the next sports, boxing, UFC, and tennis, and of course horse racing. You can't not look at horse racing throughout Africa as well.
Exactly. Totally agree with this point. That's what I see from stats. So you just maybe do you spy from me or what? Because it's totally true. It's totally true. So, Gali, it was a pleasure to have you today on air. Thank you for such enormous recommendations, not only about Europe but also about Africa in general. I think that's what we need right now. All the market needs it. Insights and knowledge about this new upcoming, one of the biggest, I still want to believe it, one of the biggest market in iGaming and our industry. So let's take care of it. Let's invest our time in culture. Let's build strong and long-term relationships with each other here. Thank you for watching. It was Vasily Gamov. See you in the next episode. Ciao.